Okay, call the meeting to order. Moved by Councillor Keel, second by Councillor Ruff. Resolved that the special meeting commence at the hour of 3:31 p.m. And be it further resolved that council acknowledges that we are meeting in the Robinson Spirit Treaty area on lands that have been traditionally used by several Indigenous nations. But we would like to pay special recognition to our closest Indigenous neighbors, the community of Bignigon Nishnabek and Nemitzigamic Nishnabek First Nations. We wish to recognize the long history of the First Nations and Métis people in our region specifically and show respect to them today. All in favor? Carried. Okay, any disclosure, pecuniary interest, or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kotick, second by Councillor Hudson. Resolved that the agenda be approved as circulated. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Delegations, presentations, no business. Moved by Councillor Keogh, second by Councillor Kotick. Resolved that council is in receipt of administration report TR 2024-04 submitted by Aaron McGregor, Deputy Treasurer, regarding the 2024 operating and capital budget revisions. Welcome, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are you on?
I don't think I'm on. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a slideshow presentation that we will run through, and then I will open it up for council's comments.
Thank you.
Just to make you post.
Yes.
I have 2, 3 township.
I have a reclaim post button. I'm going to try that. All right. So I want to start with the capital budget and the revisions to the capital budget since the last budget's approved by council. So an additional $1.14 million in capital purchases and projects is included with this budget revision. The major or those projects are here on the slide. We have $755,000 for the Ashwegan Road and Sidewalk Construction Project. This was given pre-budget approval at the last meeting of council, as well as $200,000 for asphalt patching. Now there was some minor adjustment to those numbers that is detailed in the capital budget that was provided to council. $69,500 for public works equipment, $34,000 for recreation equipment, and then $25,660 budgeted for the Prospector Park stage, which was made possible by the tireless work of the Manitowoc Anniversary Committee and a generous local donation. These new revisions and new spending will be funded by primarily the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. That will be used for the Ashwegan Road project, as well as asphalt patching. $172,000 will be taken from reserves, and then the $10,000 donation for the Prospector Park stage is part of that funding. And please interrupt at any time if you have any questions about the slide. So overall, that brings our total 2023-2024 capital budget to 16.5 million in capital spending. And that is funded by 3.6 million in reserve transfers, 3.6 million in long-term debt, 4.1 million in special grants, which are for specific projects, 2 million in special federal grants for specific projects, 1.9 million in provincial and federal infrastructure funding. So that's OCIF, Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding, and formerly the gas tax, now called Canada Community Building Fund, and 1.3 million in donations and other revenues. So the highlights, this is somewhat similar to the same presentation as last year, but with some revisions. So $7.5 million is budgeted for major renovations to the Manitowoc Community Center. 5 million for infrastructure replacement along the Manitou Road corridor. 138,300 for economic development initiatives, which includes the Tourist Information Center and EV chargers. Now, some of the spending has occurred in 2023. It is the 2023-2024 capital budget. 120,000 for the Manitowoc Public Library renovation project, which is delayed right now due to the rec center renovation project. And then just over $1 million for Oshwegan Road, townwide patching, and then Ski Hill Road and parking lot rehabilitation.
Through the chair, so the EV chargers, those are 100% covered through a grant, or like through a grant?
Yes, those are covered through a Earth Day Canada is the name of the grant.
Aviva, sponsored by Aviva.
Sponsored by Aviva. Okay.
So,
Sorry, one more question through the chair. The Ski Hill Road and parking lot rehab, that's a gravel road. Do we not have the equipment to fix that ourselves?
We do, and we are. Those costs are for the gravel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
All right.
about, I think it's a total of 38,000 in gravel, if I remember correctly.
Okay,
between-
that's reasonable. I just
Yeah,
wanted to make sure we weren't paying somebody to run equipment that we have.
for sure. Going on, we have, and these are unchanged, except the public works capital investment. So the fire department equipment, that was approved in the last budget. There has not been a change there. 211,600 for airport equipment purchases. No change to the number, however, did not update the slide. One of the projects that the airport requested has been changed from the airport sweeper attachment, which the airport management has determined that is no longer needed, given that we have some new sweeping equipment with public works that can be utilized. So instead of that, there is a new project identified at the same projected cost, and that is a generator for the airport terminal and the runway lights. So in the event of a power loss, the airport would still be able to operate normally.
Booker, through the chair, currently right now, there's nothing. If we have no power, the airport shut down.
Now, our airport manager is away right now, so I'm not 100% on this, but I believe there is a generator up there for a limited amount of the facilities and equipment out there. It does not, doesn't cover the runway lights and the terminal building. That's my understanding. And then the revisions to public works were pre-budget approval for the sweeper, as well as a front blade for the grader, which will improve the efficiency of snow removal operations, because that piece of equipment only has a middle blade, so they need to put one on the front to make it more efficient, because right now they have to send out another piece of equipment after the grader for some areas to clean up sort of dead end areas. $97,200 in water system improvements. This is the same as the last budget. There hasn't been a change there. And then there were some slight changes to recreation. Some of what was captured there was the Ski Hill parking lot and a curling rink striper. which was, the need for that was highlighted through an application for a grant under the new policy for local nonprofit groups. They had asked for a contribution to the curling rink scraper. Now, as a facilities maintenance item, we're looking at funding that for the curling rink. And then, of course, the Prospector Park stage as well is under the recreation department's capital budget. Operating budget revision highlights. So there were a number of adjustments to the operating budget. A lot of them are associated with increased costs of goods, services, and labor. And there are revisions as well based on new information, operational changes. Of course, when we budget, it is a projection and we never know sure where we're going to land. 100%, right? So changes to expectations in our operation have required adjustments. I highlighted a few of the major items that impacted the budget. So there was a budgeting error. Now, similar to last year, you may recall that I presented, there was an amount budgeted under administration that was OCIF funding. Now, as the auditors mentioned earlier today, it was a deferred revenue, meaning it's not a revenue that should be included in the operating fund unless it's set against an eligible expense. So in the last, the 2023 and 2024 operating budgets, there was an amount of 128,206 that was budgeted as a revenue. It should not have been included. It's a deferred revenue, and it's associated with the Gas Tax Canada. So we did have to remove that revenue. So that had an unfavorable impact of $128,000. We did see an increase in interest earnings projected due to the interest rate environment. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, the interest rate environment has changed compared to the norm, if you want to call it that, over the last 10, 15 years. And we are earning much higher interest on our deposits, and we do have significant deposits, so that amount does help to subsidize the operation. An overall decrease of $149,000 in budgeted garbage collection and landfill contract service expenses. This was a budgeting error. There was an amount budgeted for garbage collection. However, the fees that are paid to one of our contractors, GFL, it includes both garbage collection services and also landfill services. So it was a matter of where that money was allocated in the different department budgets. So that was a budget error correction. It's not a change in the operation or what we're being charged. That was a budget. So then other high level adjustments to the operating budget. So we had that decrease of 128,000 in general revenues. That was because it was a deferred revenue budgeted as a revenue, which had to be corrected. We have an overall cost increase of 105,000 for administration. Overall cost, and these are budgeted cost decreases and increases, of course. These aren't actuals. An overall budgeted cost decrease of 102,000 for garbage collection and landfill. Of course, council was provided with a detailed breakdown
Okay.
and, some of the main items in there were their salaries, and benefits, but also, those maintenance expenses for certain pieces. of equipment.
Which are unpredictable.
It sure can be different. Any other questions about the operating budget highlights or the capital budget highlights?
Anyone else have questions? No?
So long-term operation. So I think it's very important to highlight the funding situation for our operations budget. Now, 9% of our 2024 operating spending is funded by reserves. Using reserves to fund the operation is not a sustainable financial strategy. Use of reserves for operations, it's not sustainable. It's something that we can't plan to continue doing. So administration expects to reduce operating costs in some areas where we've identified opportunities to save and conduct the operation more efficiently without sacrificing level of service. However, that's going to be limited. There's only so much that you can make efficient and reduce costs on before you start cutting into the levels of service. So administration projects that we are going to need to adjust our levels of service or our taxes and user fees because we cannot keep drawing for reserves on an ongoing basis.
Okay, that 9%, that equals to what in dollars?
Well, let's go to the next slide and might answer your question.
It's like 1.5, 1.7.
9%, $750,000.
So that's what it is, 750?
750.
That's a good chunk of change.
So I'm not sure if this was recording the whole time. I think I just turned on the recording.
The laptop that was connected died, and so we did miss part of the meeting, so I am now recording on the laptop.
And this presentation will be published on our public feedback page, which we will be open for anybody who's just joined.
Well, through the chair, like most municipalities, what is their average like reserve percentage generally? Like what are people normally?
0.
That's a great question. I'd love to put together that information. I don't have anything built up, but I think that 0 is probably a pretty good assessment.
Yeah.
I don't think that many municipalities have large amounts of reserves. It is a good thing for a couple of reasons. I mean, contingencies is one of them. You can be prepared for who knows what might happen, including there is a lot of responsibility on municipalities to handle emergency situations. So healthy reserve is very good for that. It's also good for, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, interest revenue. We have a good chunk actually right here on this slide, $350,000 in budgeted interest income in the operating budget. If we were to not have that, that would be approximately a 10% tax increase if, say, we have no interest income. And so it's something to consider.
And if I may, through the chair, just like to contribute to this, it's also worth noting that the amount of reserves in the municipality may keep change depending on the community, the population, statistics such as that. So it's really difficult to kind of pinpoint like an average for that. Right? Because it's different for every community at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and of course, we've got different sized municipalities, right? And then the city of Thunder Bay's reserves in the national budget, I would imagine, what different. Any questions about this diagram and the portions that fund our operation? As you can see, it's about 46% of their taxation payments in lieu. OMPF is that unconditional grant funding that the auditor spoke about earlier today. Big chunk of our operation. And then user fees includes water and sewer charges. That's about 2/3 of that wedge is water and sewer charges. And then the rest of it is there are other items like landfill fees, your golf memberships and ski memberships and recreation revenues, facility rentals, all of those things. And then finally, I have a diagram of our summarize operating fund budget expenses. I have, so the document that's public, the operating budget summary, it's a higher level of detail than this diagram, but, for visualization, this is easier to read. Any questions about, where we're spending our money? Decide and illustrate something. Provide one insight.
Through the chair, just because council administration is on this side and I noticed it here. We have $5,500 budgeted towards elections. This is not an election year, so I'm just wondering where.
So, what that is it's not an election year, but we budget that, we've started budgeting that $5,000 every year. So that there's no variation. Now, it is a small amount, and a $20,000 election, $20,000 to $30,000 election stamp is about a 1% increase. By putting $5,000 away a year, it removes that shock every quarter. It's not much of a shock, it is only 1%, but if we can smooth it out over the years to prevent that change in tax rates, because it's an election year, it's something worth doing.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, so what exactly does the health and social services represent?
Health and social services includes ambulance services, Thunder Bay District Social Services Administration Board, and then Thunder Bay District Health Units. Those are the levies that we pay to those organizations.
And there's one other thing, I don't know if it has affected this budget yet or not, but the policing wages are increasing substantially going forward. So that's just something that we need to be aware of, because essentially that falls on us in the community on how much we use the OPP, and yeah, I know it's gonna be like that for every single community that uses them.
For sure, and yes, the policing wages that's the levy that we pay for the services. It will, with those increases, we expect in the future.
And through the chair, I know coming up too with the fire department, there's all kinds of new legislation coming in for their training to be amplified quite a bit, which is quite costly. I don't know, really share that information with the municipality in advance, or?
Through the chair, I can speak a little bit to that. So by, I believe it's August or July 2026, all of our firefighters need to be trained to firefighter 2. Majority of us are already getting there. The new people are mostly all going to firefighter 1 this year, and we'll be continuing the training. I believe that's already been budgeted for in the training budget for the department. From my discussions with Dawn, obviously Aaron would know more about where the budgeting went, but I believe it's already been budgeted.
Yeah, there are details in the documents provided confidentially that speak to the training, budget of the different departments, fire department included. Now, if the fire chief were here with us, I would invite our chief to answer these questions, because I'd be a little bit out of depth on those specifics. But we did consult, Chief Kruger and I consulted, and of course, once our new fire chief, Mr. Protocol starts, we have a discussion about it as well, and make sure that those needs are met. My understanding is that Chief Kruger, based on our discussions, is fine for that, and also that the fire department here is somewhat ahead of the game with respect to some of these requirements in legislation and employment details and stuff.
So if I may, through you, Mr. Chair, would it be too ridiculous for me to ask you to just cover everything that has like a large percentage increase under the summary of the operating budget? Because here there's like some percentages that are like 40% increase, 50%. Maybe just like go over that, or is that better for, I can come find you like later?
So I did highlight on this slide, these are the major impact areas. Now, this does consolidate some of the individual areas that you'd be seeing in the confidential attachments. again, it does, essentially all of the questions are going to boil down to revisions based on new information and operational changes, and then, increased costs. But if there are any specific questions.
Yeah, so that's something like, for example, filing. When I was here, we saw a pretty significant increase in the cost there. I'm curious what that entails. Is that just salaries or? Assuming I'm reading this right, I could be reading wrong.
Through the chair, if we were to have any discussion regarding anything like that, we would
Would be a
be
closed session.
required to go into a
That's kind of-
closed session if it has to do with personnel matters.
And then, of course, all of the details are provided to council in the capital budget revisions package that you have. It does show every single GL line that changes and an explanation for every single GL line that changes. So all the information is there. I think that to discuss line by line would be a closed session discussion.
All right, then I may just come track you down tomorrow or something. We can discuss that. That one, please.
You know, we're all, any other questions about the slideshow presentation or about the report or the budget?
Through the chair, just a comment there, definitely have to make some changes from, using the reserves at 9%. And then
Absolutely, and we are looking and then, like I said earlier, there are areas that we have identified that will be relatively painless as far as reductions in the whole service. But we will certainly revisit this conversation when we discuss the 2025 operating budget. And then one other thing, is around our financial statements. So we just received a presentation from the auditor today for all the 2021 financial statements. We're working diligently to get our 2022 financial statements presented. Associated with these presentations are expected to be some significant operating surpluses, and those surpluses will lessen the severity, if you will, of this reserve draw, because folks putting them into reserves from those surpluses. I'm hesitant to provide any numbers at this point because we want to go through the audit processes for 2022 and 2023 and make sure first, because there are sometimes pretty significant adjustments that may have to be made. So I wouldn't want to give you any figures that would need to be revised.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
No, is that the last slide? Oh,
That is the last one.
Sorry, through the chair, I do one more question. If we continue to draw from reserves at the rate we are, where is that projecting us? How long will the reserves take us at the rate we're going?
So at the current rate, there are a number of projects that are funded by reserves. And this is an off the cuff estimate off the top of my head. So don't hold me to this, but it would probably be 5, 6, 7 years we'd be able to proceed at this rate. We do have healthy reserves, but that's no reason to do away with them. So
For sure, I agree. I just wanted to know how dire the situation is.
yeah, we are safe at this time. It's a matter of down the road, we will not be if we continue. That's
thank you very much. Seems to be very, very educational. Okay, so, and further that council received the attached revised 2024 operating and capital budgets for review and consideration. And further that council receives the recommended 2024 contributions under the donation policy 2023-58 for review and consideration. And further that council directs staff to seek public input on the revised 2024 municipal operating and capital budget for a 2-week period. And further that council directs staff to bring the final version of the budget to a special council meeting to be held in August of 2024. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And moved by Counselor Cottick, second by Counselor Rowe, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Township of Manitouwadge had its special meeting held on Wednesday, July 31st, 2024. Be ready first and second time. And furthermore, be ready a third time, passed and numbered as bylaw number 2024-31. All in favor? Carried. Yeah. And that's it. Moved by Counselor Keough, second by Counselor Ruff, resolved that the special meeting adjourn at the hour of